In Indiana this week, a river broke a record that had stood since 1913, and 7 people are dead. 2,000 miles west, 60,000 people are out of their homes because eastern Washington is on fire. Both of those are happening right now, in the same country, in the same week, and they are not a coincidence. They are the same weather pattern, doing opposite things to opposite ends of a continent. In central Indiana, parts of the state took more than 11 inches of rain in 3 days. In one town, Newcastle, more than 11 inches fell in 32 hours, a rainfall rate that statistically belongs in a 1,000-year window. In the Pacific Northwest, the entire state of Oregon and nearly all of Washington have been sitting under moderate to extreme drought, and the fire season across the 2 states is the worst in more than 30 years. One region cannot absorb the water, the other has nothing left to burn, but everything. And here is the part almost nobody covering this has said out loud. There is one number that connects the flood and the fire, not a weather number, a human one. I will come back to it, because it is the reason this week matters, beyond either disaster on its own. First, what actually happened? The 11th of August. Severe storms move into Indiana, straight-line winds, some tornadoes, and rain that does not move on. The first death happens almost immediately, and it is not a flood death. In Jennings County, in the south of the state, a 4-year-old boy is killed when a tree comes through the wall of his bedroom during high winds. By the 13th, the governor has issued a statewide disaster emergency. By then, the problem is no longer the storms. It is that the same ground is being rained on, again and again, and the rivers have started to move. The White River runs from the north of the state down through Indianapolis. On the 15th, it crests at Anderson at just under 25 feet, breaking a record that had stood since 1913. At Noblesville, another record. At Nora, the highest water since 1913. Think about what a 113-year-old record actually means. Everything built along that river was built inside a memory of how high the water gets. Every road, every bridge, every basement, every insurance map. That memory was just proven wrong. In Indianapolis, hundreds of homes in the neighborhoods between the river and the canals are evacuated. First responders take boats into residential streets. The mayor says it is the worst flooding the city has seen in more than 30 years. Statewide, the governor's office reports more than 350 evacuations, including at a senior mobile home community north of Indianapolis, which is exactly the housing type and exactly the population that this kind of water is most likely to kill. The final toll, as of the 16th, is at least 7 dead across multiple counties. One of them was Matthew Morey, 19 years old, a recent high school graduate who was heading to Purdue. He and his friends jumped from a bridge into the Mississinawa River. His body was recovered 3 days later. His family and friends went back to that bridge during the week, not only to remember him, but to warn other people about what a swollen river actually does. That is the thing about flood deaths. Most of them are not people trapped in their homes. They are people who went closer, and the water did not stop at the state line. Overnight into Sunday, the flooding moved east into Ohio. In Perry County alone, firefighters carried out more than 50 water rescues in a single night, including a woman found standing on the roof of her car. At the peak, more than 5 million people across the Midwest and Mid-Atlantic were under flood watches. Now hold that in your head. Record river levels, saturated ground, more water than the land can take, and moved 2,000 miles west, where the exact opposite problem has been running for 3 weeks. On the 1st of August, 3 fires ignite on the northern edge of Spokane, Washington, a city of around 230,000 people. Together they are called the Spokane Complex Fire. Within about 48 hours, roughly 60,000 people are under evacuation orders, and around 640 structures are destroyed. That number deserves a second. 60,000 people is more than a quarter of that city, moving at once, on the same roads, in the same afternoon. And the warning that preceded it was itself a first. The National Weather Service issued a particularly dangerous situation red flag warning across eastern Washington, the highest fire weather alert the service has, and the first time it had ever been used there. The Washington National Guard mobilized. Washington also runs a 3-level evacuation system, and it is worth knowing because it explains how 60,000 people move in a day. Level 1 means get ready. Level 2 means get set, be packed, be able to leave in minutes. Level 3 means go now. During the Spokane fires, those levels were being redrawn neighborhood by neighborhood as the fire behavior changed hour to hour and pushed out through county alert systems, which means the single most important thing a resident could do was not watch the news. It was be signed up to receive the message. Why there and why this year? Because of the drought. Across the summer, effectively all of Oregon and nearly all of Washington sat under moderate to extreme drought, which does something specific and irreversible to a landscape. It lowers the moisture content of the fuel. A living forest with water in it resists ignition. It has to be dried before it will burn, and that costs the fire energy. Strip the moisture out in advance, and that step disappears. A spark that would have gone out instead becomes a fire front, and the fire spreads at the speed of the wind rather than the speed of the drying. That is why fire seasons do not scale gently. They step. And the numbers this year have stepped. Oregon and Washington are having their worst fire season in more than 3 decades, with roughly 2.7 million acres burned across the 2 states. Nationally, the count has run past 45,000 fires and more than 5 million acres, ahead of the 10-year average for this point in the season, on both measures. The smoke did not stay local either. Satellite imagery showed it streaming east across Washington, into Idaho, Montana, and into Canada. Astronauts on the space station photographed it flowing past Mount Rainier and Mount Hood. If this is the kind of breakdown you want when the next one of these weeks arrives, subscribe. That is it. Back to the story. So, flood in the middle, fire in the west, same week. Not a coincidence, and not, on its own, a mystery. A ridge of high pressure, a heat dome, forces air downward. Sinking air warms as it compresses, and it destroys cloud. So underneath the ridge you get heat, sun, no rain, and a landscape that dries out and keeps drying out. That is the Pacific Northwest summer, and it is the fuel moisture story from the last act. But that air has to go somewhere. The jet stream cannot cut through the ridge, so it runs around the northern and eastern edge of it. And along that edge, hot, moist air from the south collides with cooler air arriving from the northwest. That boundary is where storms are built, and when the ridge sits still for days, the boundary sits still too. Storms form there, run along it, and are replaced by more storms taking the same path. Forecasters call it training, because the storms follow each other, like cars over one stretch of track. It is the single most important concept in flash flooding, and it is why rainfall totals in an event like Indiana's do not look like weather. They look like a mistake. 4 inches of rain across 2 days is a wet week. 11 inches over the same ground in 32 hours is a river that has nowhere to put it. So one pressure system dries a forest on one side and drowns a river valley on the other. Same physics, opposite consequences. Which is why the two halves of this story were always going to arrive together. Now the number I said I would come back to. It is not rainfall, and it is not acres. At the same time as all of this, there were 99 large fires burning across the United States, and Washington State alone had 17 of them. 99 simultaneous large fires is not a weather statistic, it is a staffing statistic. Because there is no separate American reserve of flood responders and fire responders. There is one national pool, incident management teams, hotshot crews, air tankers, National Guard units, federal disaster funds, and it is finite. A crew assigned to a fire in Oregon is not available for a levee in Indiana. A guard unit doing high water rescues in Indianapolis is not on a fire line in Spokane. And you can see the system reaching for the top of its ladder in both places in the same week. Indiana declares a statewide emergency on the 13th, then receives a federal emergency declaration, then moves toward requesting a major disaster declaration to unlock more federal money. Washington mobilizes the National Guard for a fire weather warning that had never been issued there before. The NASA Disasters Program is activated to support county-level emergency management on the fires. Every one of those is an escalation. Each one means the level below it was not enough. That is what makes a week like this different from a bad flood or a bad fire season. Individually, the United States absorbs both of these every year. What it does not have infinite capacity for is both at once, in multiple states, while the fire season is already running ahead of its 10-year average, with 3 months left in it. So where does it stand? In Indiana, the water has receded and the recovery has started. That phase is quieter, and it is not safer. Buildings that stood through the flood come down afterwards. Wells and municipal water get contaminated. Electrical systems that were submerged get switched back on. Most of the injuries in a flood happen after it. There is also a financial phase that runs for years. Most American homeowners are not covered for flood damage under a standard policy. Flood is a separate product, and in a river valley that had not flooded like this since 1913, a large share of the people whose houses just filled with water will have had no reason to buy it. That is why a broken record matters more than it sounds. It is not only that the water was higher than expected, it is that the expectation itself is what people insured against. In the Pacific Northwest, the fires are still burning, and the drought that fed them has not broken. Nothing about a containment percentage changes the fuel moisture, and the pattern that produced both is still in place. A ridge over the south and southwest, storms tracking along its northern rim, and the same jet stream position that put 11 inches of rain over central Indiana in the first place. If you are anywhere in the flood footprint, do not go back into a building before it has been checked. Do not use water from a private well until it has been tested, and treat every downed line as live. And the rule that matters most, because it is where most flood deaths actually happen, do not drive into standing water. 2 feet will move a pickup, and you cannot see whether the road under it is still there. If you are in the fire footprint, sign up for your county's alert system today, rather than during an evacuation. And know that smoke is a health event hundreds of miles beyond the fire line, not just at it. The useful takeaway is not that America had a bad week. It is that the flood and the fire came from one system, and they drew down one set of resources, and that is a pattern, not an accident. 7 people died in Indiana. 60,000 left their homes in Washington. Neither of those events was rare on its own. Both of them together, in 1 week, is the thing worth watching. We are tracking this one. If the ridge holds, there will be more.